Again? Shut down. Why is it shut down? Not sure why. Yeah, we'll start in a minute. Just having some Facebook problems as usual. Not sure why Facebook's not working these days, but the show must go on. Why is it not working? I don't know. Okay. It is what it is. בשם השם נעשה ונצליח, שיעור תורה, ברוכים הבאים. We're back here on a Sunday night, continuing our series of Chovot HaLevavot. This is Zot Chanukah. It's the last day of Chanukah, the last evening of Chanukah, where this is a special night where you could ask for miracles. And BeEzrat HaShem HaKadosh Baruch Hu will provide all the miracles that are good for us and for all of Am Yisrael, BeEzrat HaShem. Tonight's shiur is going to be for the Refuah Shlema and Hatzlacha Rabba for Rabbi Ephraim ben Shulamit, Rabbanit Sarah bat Anat, Rabbanit Levana bat Sarah bat Levana, Vimori David ben Esriya, Imimorati Doris bat Jora, and all of Am Yisrael and all the righteous Noahis that continue to support, continue to watch, continue to grow with us, Baruch Hashem. Anyone that wants to get some of the new books that we have in the Kiruv store, we have a couple of new books in the Kiruv store, and it's also a brand new website. Go to kiruvstore.org. You get some of these new books. These books are more for yeshivot and Batei Knesset rather than the general public, especially the brown one. It's for Talmidei Chachamim. It's not an easy read, but needless to say, it's extraordinary Torah that Rabbi Ephraim has toiled over, and Baruch Hashem we've published. BeEzrat Hashem, more stuff is going to come out in the next month or two. That's more for the general public, but of course, this is Torah and this is Torah. So, Rabotai Ikarim, we've taken a big break on this series, and now we're back. But just to give everyone a reminder, where the Chovot HaLevavot, Rabbeinu Bachya, taught us how the duties of the heart, based on logical reason, are an obligation, not just a suggestion to inspect our heart when we're doing what we're doing mitzvot, when we're giving tzedakah, where we're doing the mitzvot of Chanukah, we're doing the mitzvot of Simchat Torah, or the mitzvot of Sukkot. All of those mitzvot, all of the things that we do, require us to investigate and inspect our heart in order to have much meaning. But the question is, does the Torah actually obligate us to inspect our heart? And after clarifying that logical reason shows us an obligation to inspect our heart, the Chovot HaLevavot is going to bring us on what the Torah has to say about it, and whether it's a suggestion from the sages or an obligation from HaShem. And through that, we're going to explore the Torah hearts of some of our sages and get an inclination of their greatness, as well as how we could apply some of this to our lives. And in a world of confusion where every other day there's a fake Mashiach or some other psychopath or heretic, whatever it is, the Chovot HaLevavot is really unveiling our eyes to see the beauty of the truth of Torah and of us. So the Chovot HaLevavot is now going to tell us what the Torah has to say about it, and really he writes it in a way where he's taking us through his own inspection. And he says as follows: when it became clear to me that according to the dictates of reason, the duties of the heart should be obligatory, I said to myself, perhaps they're not mentioned in the Torah, and that's why no one has ever written a book about them to familiarize us with the subject and to reveal its principles. Here, the Chovot Le'avot is, in essence, taking us through his own holy reasoning, where usually the way things would work is that first you find something in the Torah and then you elaborate it. But here, the Chovot Le'avot has found something, makes a lot of sense, but now he wants to see where the Torah has something to say about it. Now, this is not something that today we're supposed to do. It's supposed to be the opposite. But to give a comparison of the minds and the hearts of today versus the previous generations, especially the Rishonim, the ones that, like the Chovot Le'avot from 1,000 years ago, 800 years ago, the Brisker Rav said it where when he would see one of the writings of the Rashba. The Rashba was Rabbi Shlomo ben Aderet, lived about 800 years ago. He was one of the Talmidim of the Ramban. And any time the Rashba or the Rambam or any of the great sages from that time would write, they would give, the different clarifications of what the Torah says, but from time to time you would see the words V'nir'ali or Yir'eli, meaning it seems to me. Now, if somebody would say it seems to me today, doesn't really mean that much, because it seems to you that you should put ketchup on your eggs. It seems to him that you should watch a movie tonight instead of a Shiur Torah. It seems to people a lot of things. But when the Torah sages from that time would write, it seems to me, the Brisker Rav would say, at that moment I knew there's nothing for me to challenge here. If he would bring a specific Gemara that would give an idea, I could always conflict with it. But if he says, and it seems to, then I know this is the entire Torah that created and therefore concluded. Last year, when we talked about David HaMelech, where in the Sefer Shmuel Aleph, in chapter 24, in verse number 5 and 6, David HaMelech is in a position where he could kill Shaul HaMelech, which technically was his enemy. Shaul was trying to kill him. And Shaul brought his entire army to the desert of En Gedi and went into a cave to relieve himself, not knowing that David HaMelech was there. And David had an opportunity to kill him. But David says to HaShem that he wants his Torah to be part of him. La'asot Toratecha betoch me'ai, to make the Torah come into my innards. And therefore David HaMelech didn't just go and kill Shaul, but rather he tested himself by cutting a piece of his garment, of his tzitzit, to see how his heart feels. And as soon as Pasuk says, Vayach lev David, David's heart was hurt. The Torah sages would say things like, it seems to me, it's not the same thing as somebody today says me. The Khatam Sofer said that time somebody would ask him a question, that the first answer that came to his mind was the right answer. In the Torah, to such an extent, filled my mind only with Torah and nothing else. And therefore I know that the immediate response is, and therefore that's the right response. The Chovot HaLevavot is telling us that he has searched through reason and he has found. He is now searching for what the Torah has to say about it. Review this, we have to understand, like anything else, it all depends on who's saying what. If somebody that has only learned for a couple of years says something, versus someone that has toiled for several decades says something, certainly there's a different weight in every aspect. It's funny that if an expert doctor says something, people listen without question. If someone that's still in medical school says something, people most of the time do not really respond. Why? Because they understand logically this one has experience while the other one still does not. But in the world of Torah, when some heretic says something that has no foundation, that actually goes against the foundation, if it's pleasing to people's ears, they'll take it over the words of the Torah sages. They'll take it over the Rambam. They'll take it over Rabbeinu Yonah. They'll take it over everything else. Why? Because in the second example, it's the Yetzirah that's manipulating people to fall trap into the illogical. When Rav Kanievsky would give somebody a blessing, it would not only make their day, it would literally make their life. When people came to him for advice, they gave him questions and they would literally hope that he would just say just a few words and that would be more than enough for him. More than enough for them. He saved on his time so much that even he turned his blessings into an acronym. Bua Bua. Bracha v'atzlacha, bracha v'atzlacha. But what made Rav Kanievsky such a enormous Torah heart, Torah mind? Well, perhaps this will give an example. One of the times that Rav Kanievsky did not feel well, the family called the doctor to come. And when the doctor came, he asked Rav Kanievsky, "So how are you feeling?" The truth is, I'm not getting enough time to learn the Tosefta. I don't feel well. I don't know if the doctor understood what Tosefta means. So he asked a follow-up question and said, Kanievsky says, "Yes, I'm very hungry for more Tosefta." Perhaps the doctor told the family, maybe you can make him Tosefta with some milk in it. Maybe he didn't understand, perhaps, that this means one of the bodies of work of the Torah. But they actually felt. This is what he actually thought. This was not nothing for him to show off. So when the Chovot HaLevavot is telling us, I found that reason obligates us to inspect our heart. And now I'm going to show you that the Torah also obligates us. He's now bringing us the verses, or at least some of them. He says, when I searched for them, I found them mentioned many times. And here are some of the examples. The first verse is what we read every single day in our prayer. אלוקיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך. והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך. Love Hashem your God with all of your heart and with all of your soul and with all of your might. These words which I command you this day must be on your heart. This is in Deuteronomy chapter 6 verses 5 and 6. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is obligating us that the words that He's told us, the words that He's written for us, must be on our heart, meaning we need to inspect them. And the Gemara in Masechet Ta'anit says, what does it mean to inspect your heart? It means inspect it when you pray. Many times, when a person first starts doing tshuva, they are usually after they get acclimated to praying and everything, they get very excited and they take their time when they pray. But as somebody goes on, especially for men, praying 3 times a day, they get so accustomed to it that many times it becomes robotic. Many times it becomes monotonous. Many times it becomes something that you need to do. You forget that you're HaShem and that He's right there in front of you. And this is applicable to all of us. Whether you're praying at a big synagogue or small synagogue, or you're praying at home, when you're praying, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is there. But what can we do that the YITZHAK makes us forget about it? Not by ruining our memory, but rather by scattering our memory and putting other stuff there, like the bills you have to pay, the phone calls you have to return, the messages that keep ticking every 2 seconds and make a sound on your phone or computer, the different things that you need to do, the chores, the problems, all the different things go on your mind. Dafka when you pray. And when you go through prayer, sometimes you forget that HaShem is right there. And you just want to go through it and finish it as if your goal is to just get a check mark next to praying. In reality, you missed the whole point. Because if this was an important meeting where you're meeting with a customer that's going to potentially give leader that could potentially give you what you need, certainly you would think about your words, certainly you would evaluate what you're going to say before you say it, think twice about everything. But when it comes to prayer, the YITZHAK gets you to forget that you're talking to HaShem. Sometimes it'll even get you to forget by making you think about all the Torah you need to learn. And you'll start thinking about, oh, I need to learn this, I need to open this, I need to call the Rabbi, I need to... Seems like it's a mitzvah, but this is not the right time for it. And therefore the Chovot HaLevavot is telling us to love HaShem with all of your heart, with all of your soul and all your might, means that you're commanded to have this in your heart at all times. Inspect your heart. Pray while you pray. Think about the word you're saying when you pray. And this is not easy. Rav Baruch Shimon Salomon, alav Shalom, was the Rav Ephraim's rabbi when he was young. And he studied with him in yeshiva for many years. And he says that when all of the Bachurim would pray, one of the things that everyone could never forget, could never miss, was watching the Rav pray. Because he would pray every single word, the Psukei de Zimra, every single word out loud with excitement, to such an extent that by the time he got to Amidah, the Tfilat Shmona Esrei, he has exerted all of his strength to the point where he can barely stand. And then his Amidah would also be very long. Every day, putting his heart out in the prayer, each and every single time, 3 times a day. And this is the difference, Rabotai. It's not just like the world celebrates somebody's one-time achievement and therefore decides that they're great because they won some match, or they won some trophy, or they won some award based on a single performance. To be a tzaddik, to be an Eved Hashem, is something that gets evaluated every single day. Especially when it comes to the things that don't give you so much notoriety, don't give you so much recognition. In fact, only you and HaShem know about it because it's in your heart. The Chovot HaLevavot then brings us another source. It says, also in Deuteronomy chapter 30, verse 20, it says, to love HaShem your God, to obey His voice, and to attach yourself to Him. A person that has read this each and every single year when they're reading their weekly parasha, if they're not delving into the words, then it just seems like, oh, love Hashem, that's good. I love Hashem. I could put a little rubber band on my hand or some type of, medallion or something, say I love you Hashem, and that's enough. But really, the pasuk means a whole lot more than that. To love Hashem means, His voice means that you're cleaving yourself, you're attaching yourself to HaKadosh Baruch Hu at all times. Whether it's in the morning, before you start your day, or during your business meetings. Or it's simply when you're getting coffee, or when you're having an argument with somebody. Whether you're making a business transaction or a marriage proposal. Whether you're having children or raising children. Cleaving to HaKadosh Baruch Hu is something that gets evaluated with every single move that a person makes from beginning to end of life. And based on how much HaKadosh Baruch Hu means to you, that's how much you're going to cleave to Him. You could easily blurt out the words that you love Hashem. But if you forgot that He even exists during one of your transactions and corrupted business, then it means that your love is empty. You could say that you believe in Hashem and you love Hashem and you even donated to publicize His name. But if that's with stolen money, or if that's while you're committing immorality on a regular basis, if that's while you're violating His laws and driving on Shabbat, then your love is a lie. When a person thinks about these verses, he understands that in order for you to fulfill the love of Hashem, you must inspect your heart. Would you want Hashem to love you that way? The way you love Him? If you were the father, would you want a son like you that says, I love you and with one word, but goes against you with another? So the Chovot HaLevavot then says another verse, also in Deuteronomy chapter 11, verse 13, the Torah obligation to love Hashem your God, and to serve Him with all your heart and with all your soul. Each one of these seems repetitive, but they're not. They're completely different commandments. This is the commandment where a person is literally obligated to sacrifice everything for the sake of Hashem, whether it's business profits, pleasures. The more you're considering something that violates the word of Hashem, the more lacking you have in the love of Hashem. And needless to say, if you are violating the word of Hashem, then certainly there's a lacking. And then in chapter 13, verse 5, it says, after Hashem your God should you walk, in Him should you fear. Or in Vayikra chapter 19, verse 18, it says, love your neighbor like yourself. These all seem like just statements that we've read or we've heard, but each one, how can you fear God? And what does that have to do with loving your neighbor like yourself? Fearing God means where you stand and where He is. The greater a person thinks of themselves, the more likely they are to think that Hashem needs them. The more likely they are to go against Hashem. The more likely they are to think that Hashem owes them something. But we see that the Torah sages and giants thought the exact opposite. The greater they were in righteousness and Kedusha, the less they thought of themselves. Avraham Avinu, Moshe Rabbeinu, these are the greatest of the great. Yet they all thought of themselves as nothing. As David velo ish, I am a worm but not a man. Avraham said, Ani afar ve'efer, I am dust and ashes. And Moshe Rabbeinu said, V'anachnu ma, we're nothing. Not even dust, not even a worm. And this type of mindset, this type of belief, transcended from generation to generation with each person that was close to Hashem in their own capacity. The less they realize they are. And thereby they feared Hashem much more. Because they realized that everything is in His hands and nothing is in their control. Everything is from heaven except the fear of heaven. Now what does that have to do with loving your neighbor like yourself? Another Torah obligation people like to talk about, how you're supposed to love everyone. Well, first of all, Ve'afta le'reacha kamocha, the Chafetz Chaim, Rabbi Victor Miller, and many Chachamim, the Gemara itself, Shulchan Aruch always talks about Ve'afta le'reacha. Reacha means he's your neighbor, is your brother in mitzvot, meaning it's a Torah observant Jew. It's not a Mechalel Shabbat or a heretic that you're obligated to love, but rather someone that is partners with you in mitzvot, and there's an obligation for you to love him like you love yourself. How can you love somebody like you love yourself? You want people to help you. So when someone else is in need, you need to help them. And even the way that you help them has to be the way you would want to be helped. Just saying, hey, here's a phone number. You can call this guy, maybe he could help you. That's nice. But you know that if it was you, on the other hand, you'd want the other person to perhaps make the call for you, maybe make the introduction. The more you love your fellow Jew, the easier it is going to be for you to see all of this. They say in the name of Rav Kook, alav shalom, that whenever a person is lacking in their love of Am Yisrael, in their love of their fellow Jews, they're also lacking in their love of Hashem. Because the Zohar Kadosh teaches us, Kudsha brichu in Yisrael echadu. HaKadosh Baruch Hu made himself one with Am Yisrael. And as we've said in previous lectures, if you want to show that you love somebody, the best way to express it is by loving their children. You want to show that you love Hashem is by loving His kids. So many times people say, well, I love Hashem, I want to do what He says, but they can't stand other Jews. They don't want to help anybody. They don't have any patience for anyone. And they forget that sometimes, they're the ones that need help. Sometimes, they're the ones that are a problem. Sometimes, they're the ones that are annoying. But yet they still expect help. They still expect somebody to have patience with them. They still expect somebody to be there for them. When a person loves Hashem, they have to think about all of this. Because you can't say that you love Hashem, but you can't stand His children. You can't say that you love Hashem, but all you can see is the bad in His children. Certainly, there are times where you have to rebuke, but as I've told you guys in the past, there's two types of rebuke. There's the rebuke that you give to the general public, and there's rebuke that you give to specific people. These are two different things. When Moshe Rabbeinu would speak to Am Yisrael and yell at them and say that they're mitonenim, they're complainers, how could them with all types of punishments that will happen to them? But then when he would speak to Hashem on their behalf, he'd say, oh, Hashem, they're only kids. They don't know what they're doing. They would have never made the golden calf had you not given them gold. In so many words, blaming Hashem for their flawed. But that's what Hashem wanted. That's what Hashem wanted. The same goes when Moshe Rabbeinu would speak to individuals. At times, the person would come with all types of problems, and Moshe Rabbeinu, Avraham Avinu would listen, and Rav Ovadia would listen, and the Rambam would listen, and all of the great rabbis would listen patiently to whatever the issue was. Deal with them with patience, and deal with their annoyance, and deal with their lack of gratefulness, and still help them. Why? I'm obligated to. I love them. They're Hashem's children. But then there was a separated time, a different time, when someone would go against the Torah with zeal and chutzpah, like Korach ve'adato. And there Moshe Rabbeinu did not skip a beat and told everybody, stay away from these wicked people lest you die with them. So there are different types of rebuke. A person has to have the logic to know when to do what. And the best is usually to not rebuke your personal friends and family, but rather send them shiurim. It's much easier and it's more successful. But needless to say, if a person thinks about how they could fulfill this mitzvah of loving Hashem and loving His children, if you think about it, you'll find a way to succeed. Why? Because you'll start looking at it from a different perspective. Not just what the person should do, but rather, how can I help him do it? Not just, oh, he's a bad person, but rather, why he's mistaken, why he's going in this direction. How would I want someone to treat me, to speak to me, to convince me if I was in his shoes? And perhaps, even if I was in his shoes, I wouldn't understand because we have two different personalities. So how can I be convinced from his perspective? It's called empathy. The more a person delves into it and digs into their own heart, they will discover whether they are actually in love with Hashem or simply what He gives them. Most people love what Hashem gives them. They don't have any concept. And that's why the Chovot HaLevavot says, the next verse, also in Deuteronomy chapter 10, verse 12, and now Israel, what does Hashem your God ask of you? Only that you fear God. This is what Moshe Rabbeinu told to Am Yisrael. You don't have so much to think about. What do I need to do? How do I need to do it? All you got to think about, fear God. Why? Because if you fear God, you won't go against Him. But how could I fear God? How could I fear God if I don't delve into it and figure out how glorious He is, how much He controls, how every single one of the over 86,000 seconds or 84,000 seconds per day that we have every day, He controls, He's receptive to, He monitors, He calculates. 24 hours a day, He's there every single second. My entire life, He's been there. When I thought that I was walking alone, I didn't realize that He was carrying me. The more a person delves into where HaShem is and where they are, the easier it is to fear Him. The easier it is to follow Him. The easier it is to obey Him and ultimately to love Him. But the more a person is selfish, self-centered, and only cares about their own interest, the more removed they are from HaShem. And they'll even go to the extent of using HaShem to build themselves a stage. One of the ways that HaKadosh Baruch Hu allows us to express the love, us v'ahavta lerecha kamocha, to love your fellow Jew. But He also tells you, another one of the sources, you must love the stranger, for you are strangers in the converts. And the Rambam, Maimonides, says this is different than loving a Jew from birth. Why? Because we see, based on the rules of interpreting the Torah, that the way that this verse is written, ve'aftam et agil, that you must love the convert, that there's an extra word, et. And when we compare this to another verse, ve'aftam et Hashem, Rabbi Akiva teaches us, this means that more than just loving Hashem, also love His sages. When you respect kabed et avicha ve'et imecha, honor your father and your mother. The et always means more. So what does it mean when it says ve'aftem et in the same level as you love Hashem? Meaning your tradition is not your language. You have to find a way to love Him a whole lot more than you can possibly imagine. When somebody asked the Lubavitch, our heart on the left side of the body, when we know that most good things are on the right side. Rabbi, in his way, explained this in a wonderful way. And he says, yes, you're right. Your heart is on the left. It's to my right. To show you that in order for you to fulfill the word of Hashem, you can't just look at yourself, your perspective. You got to look at another Jew. His heart's on the right. Even though he may say something that you don't like, he may do something you don't like, his heart's on the right. When a person is cleaving to Hashem, it becomes much easier to love his children, becomes much easier to love the mitzvot, becomes much easier. In fact, it becomes natural. But when a person is a faker, they could use Hashem as a stage to build for themselves even while they look religious. And this is not just my words. This was already written thousands of years ago. The Avot Rabbi Natan has a whole bereta about it. Everyone knows that the Pharisees, Rabban Gamliel, these were the tzaddikim. But this bereta says there are fakers. 7 types of fakers that also call themselves Push. Who are they? Says there's the Parush Shechmi, the Shechemite Parush. He really circumcised himself for ulterior motives. Meaning he does whatever he does because he's trying to get money out of it, because he's trying to get recognition out of it. Like the Rasha from Shechem that sold the Me'arat HaMachpelah. Then there is the Parush Nakafi, the knocking Parush. What's this knocking Parush? This is a guy that tries to portray himself as if he's a tzaddik because he walks around with dragging his feet, kicking rocks, so people will pay attention to him. Oh, look, he's so humble. He doesn't even pick up his feet. Then there is the real expert, the Parush Kizai. That's the bloodletting Parush. What does it mean, bloodletting Parush? He pretends that he's watching his eyes so much that he only looks on the floor, and he wants you to know that he's only looking on the floor. So he runs into things, so much so that he runs into the wall and blood splashes. Oh wow, look at this tzaddik. Look, he doesn't look at anything. He wants to protect his eyes from looking at a woman that he runs into walls. No, he's just a liar. Then there's a guy that's unfortunately very common today among lazy people, especially those that do tshuva and really want to run away from their life. That's the Parush Melacha Italu. That's a Parush who had work. What does it mean? It's a Parush says, you know what, I can't handle being in this world with all of these sinners and working. I have to just stay home and just, I'll just study. Okay, but how are you going to eat? Your wife, you have kids. How are you going to eat? Pay the bills. Oh, Hashem is going to send it to me. Listen, if your emunah is really that way, 2 seconds, you're asking people for money, you're asking people for all types of things, so you're a faker. If your emunah is very high and you're really going to study like an avrech, sure, no problem. But in reality, all day you're on TikTok, all day you're on Twitter, all day you're playing sports, playing video games. You're not a Parush, you're just lazy. But you're pretending that you don't really want to be in the social world and you don't want to be in the business world because you're such a righteous person. That's a Parush Melacha Italu, meaning he used to have work. But now he's using the Torah to quit his job so he can pretend like he's religious. And then there's the Parush Ma Chovati Ve'esena. This is another faker that says, what have I not done? What have I not done to serve Hashem? There's a guy that wants everybody to think that he has done everything already. Oh, I learned everything. I've studied everything. I've given everything. I've done everything. What have I not done? Rabotai Karim, fakers is not a new thing. Fakers is not a new thing. They're as old as time. And the Chovot HaLevavot says that in order for you to not fake yourself out, to not fall into the trap of the Satan that tells you that you are more than what you really are, you have to inspect your heart and check, are you righteous or lazy? Are you righteous or selfish? Are you righteous or simply a liar? Where do you stand? When you pray to Hashem, are you talking to Him or are you thinking about your bank account? When you learn Torah, are you learning in order to show people you know better than them? Or are you learning because you want to cleave to Hashem and see the wonderful insights that He can open your mind and unveil your heart to? Why do you do what you do? This can only be done through inspecting what's really in your heart. Rav Moshe Feinstein, alav shalom, every day after you would complete prayer, on the way to walking home, there would literally be a line of people following him, asking him questions about every single aspect of the Torah. Whether it's a chidush that somebody didn't understand, or somebody discovered, or somebody wants to know, or it's every type of halacha, every type of question. And Rav Moshe Feinstein would answer them one after the other, each and every single day for decades. And one day, somebody asked Rav Moshe Feinstein, how do you remember the entire Torah by heart. How do you remember all of this? Every possible question is asked and you give them answers, sources, place, everything. How do you remember? Rav Moshe Feinstein, in his humility, sees this Jew really wanting the answer. And he says to him, if you saw an elephant dancing in the middle of the street while painting and singing in English, would you remember it? The guy says, of course, Rabbi. Yeah. Why? Why would you remember it? Because it's amazing. It's one of a kind. It's something unprecedented. Moshe Feinstein says, exactly. That's every single time I look at the Torah. That's what it is. It's one of a kind. It's unprecedented. It's unbelievable. Every single thing is new. So I get excited about what Rabbi Yosef Karo said, what the Rambam says, what the Rosh says, what the Rif says, what Rabbi Akiva says. All over again and again and again, each and every single time. And therefore I remember it. You're more excited about elephants. Rabotai Karim, the great Torah scholars did not become great because of genes, because of DNA. Literally used in every possible way to cleave to HaShem, by inspecting it and trying to figure out which part of it is not fixing it. At themselves, with honest eyes, they should be able to know what needs fixing, what's work in progress. The Chovot HaLevavot is giving us not only rational reasons of why we need to inspect, our obligation to inspect our hearts. And this Torah obligation is on each and every single one of us. Because if we don't inspect our hearts, we're missing the point. We're going to be able to do certain things, but completing them without achieving them. When a person learns Torah, they like to hear stories of great Torah scholars, or how this one knew the entire Torah, or that one knew the entire Torah. And of course, the average person says, well, I'm never going to be a Rav Mazuz, I'm never going to... Fine, but you could still be the best version of yourself. And that's why Rav Hutner, Alav Shalom, never liked to tell the stories of the child prodigies, where they knew the entire Torah by the time they were 8, because the average person is not. It's 8 years old and knows the entire Torah. Rather, he liked to tell the stories of the Torah sages that toiled to become what they are in every single aspect of themselves. One of the Chachamim that my dear Rav studied with was the son of Rav Moshe Levi. Rav Moshe Levi was one of two students of Rav Mazuz, Alav Shalom. There was Rav Moshe Levi and Rav Moshe Chawev. And these two Chachamim, Rav Mazuz would say, between the two of them, the entire Torah, they go back and forth, going through the entire Torah by heart. And they asked Rav Moshe Levi once, how did you get this way? How do you remember all of this? I mean, very few shurim of his and online, but you'd see that literally in a matter of an hour, 300-400 sources. How? He says, well, I used to be like everyone else. Study and forget. Study and forget. I completed Masechet Brachot 7 times and forgot everything. Didn't remember anything. I realized what the Gemara in Masechet Megillah says, that when you learn Torah without it, it's as if you're saying to HaShem that His laws are bad. So I started learning again from that point on with excitement. With excitement. Amar Abaye, wow, Abaye, who was Abaye? Abaye was an orphan, Abaye was a tzaddik, Abaye had all the difficulties in the world, but yet he succeeded in becoming one of the greatest Torah sages. What did he say? Oh, I see him here, I see him there. And you start getting into it. And you're excited learning. And he says when you're excited in learning Torah, it sticks. It becomes part of you. It becomes part of you. It's not like anything else. Because you can learn a lot of things and remember them. But the Torah, every bit of it that becomes a part of you, helps to improve you. And there are great bits of knowledge, and there are things that you would seem that are irrelevant to the world of Torah. So when people think of Torah, perhaps they think of laws of kashrut, family purity, Shabbat, holidays. When it comes to other subjects, they go to the philosophers and destroy their minds in that world. They don't realize that everything is in the Torah. Afochba ve'afochba dekulaba. One example is people that want to learn different things, and they go into the wrong places to find them when they don't realize that all of this is in the Torah. One example that I just learned from my dear Rav is something that the scientific world really has no explanation for. If you notice, any time that you yawn, even if there's somebody that's across the room from you, if they see you yawn, they'll yawn also. In fact, even if you see somebody on a screen yawn, you'll yawn also. And really, the scientific world has no idea why you even yawn. Now, the average person thinks you yawn because you're tired, but really, it's not true. You're not always tired. Rabbi Nachman of Breslov, alav shalom, explains the yawn in a fantastic way. And he says, yawning is not for naught. Rather, it's a message from heaven that someone has put ayin hara on you. Someone has put ayin hara on you, and the Gemara itself says that there are countless reasons of why somebody could put some ayin hara on somebody or even on themselves. And guess what? Ayin hara is so detrimental that 99% of deaths happen because of ayin hara. And Rabbi Nachman of Breslov says, you're yawning, that's a message from heaven, that somebody has put ayin hara on you, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu is trying to save you. How? When you yawn, you breathe a lot. And it's to remind you to thank HaKadosh Baruch Hu that you have this extra breath, that you're still alive, because somebody's trying to kill you with their ayin hara. So he's sending you a big breath, and forcing you to inhale a lot, more than you typically do, in order to remind you of all of the amazing things Hashem has given you without you even realizing it. Who thinks about their kidneys until they hear a story of somebody needing one? Who thinks about their appendix until they hear about somebody that had a surgery to remove theirs? Who thinks about the necessity of having good eyes until they see somebody that's blind? So many things HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives us, and we forget the value. We forget the need. We forget about all types of things. Because we want this, because we want that, because we need this, because he said that, because she said that. And in reality, All of this complaining is simply a lack of understanding what HaKadosh Baruch Hu has given you. If you have time to complain, that's because you're not spending enough time saying thank you to HaShem for all the things you do have, for all the things He does give you. So even something as simple as a yawn is a message from heaven that's trying to save you. But the average person thinks of a yawn as, oh, I'm tired, or it just happens. No. Nothing just happens. Nothing just happens. When a person starts to look at things from a Torah perspective, they'll understand why our own dear Dayan, Rav Didi, wrote in a recent write-up that he said, Al tagid uf, tomar perekuf. Stop saying uf, meaning enough. Instead, say perekuf, say Tehillim number 100, which is Mizmor LeTodah. And the whole message there is HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we won't have anything to complain about. Because there's so much to thank Him for. Give our attention. It's insignificant in comparison to all the good He does give us. Now when a person is sick, is in pain, they can think of, oh, poor me. That Hashem gave them, and recognize His greatness of how every part of your body exists. The fact that your legs hurt. Thank Hashem you have legs. You know how many people would love to replace their life with yours, their body with yours, just to have your legs? When your back hurts, you know how many people would love to have back pain instead of being a paraplegic and not feeling anything from their neck down? When your teeth hurt, you know how many people would love to have a toothache rather than simply having nothing there? When your eyes hurt, you know how many people would, just like you do, even if they hurt? When a person is having difficulty, they forget Hashem. They forget Hashem until they become hopeless. And that's not really the right time. You're not supposed to think of Hashem when you become hopeless. You're supposed to think of Hashem at all time, because that is what makes you hopeful. Because you know He's the one running the show. Because you know He's the one that gives, He's the one that takes. And in so many words, any time that Hashem gives us something that hurts, it's simply to get our attention, no different than the yawn. It's to give us a message, no different than the yawn. Your pocket hurts because you lost some money, that's a message from Hashem. What have you been doing with your money? Your situation hurts, what have you been doing? Everything is HaKadosh Baruch Hu simply giving us guidance to inspect our heart. And it's not just a recommendation based on logic, it's an obligation. It's not just a recommendation based on the Torah, it's an obligation. Because if we want to serve Hashem, we must inspect our heart. And when we do, we'll arrive at completely different conclusions, completely different perspectives, completely different lives. And not just listening. That when we're acting in the world, He's there watching every single move, and not just after the fact. When we're speaking, He's listening, word by word. Everything, He's there. He's there. The more we inspect our heart, the more we can express our love and our fear of Hashem. And by default, our love and fear in the way we serve Him, the way we love fellow Jews, the way we respect each other. In fact, even the way we deal with all of the nations, whether it be our friends that are from other nations or our enemies. The more we inspect our heart, the more we know what is the will of HaShem. The less we inspect our heart, it's like walking blind and expecting to arrive at the destination. This, Rabotai Karim, is some of the things that we learned that should give each and every one of us some food for thought until the next time. When we inspect our heart a little bit more and dig deeper into it with the Chovot HaLevavot, written nearly 1,000 years ago, but is as relevant today as it has been ever. Thank you very much for learning with me. Anyone that wants to support can donate on our website, BeEzratHashem.org, especially those that want to help us grow, get further. There's also tax benefits to do it before the end of the year, but more than anything else, support generously because there's simply a lot that we can do together. These books that we give out for free, boxes and boxes of them, almost 300,000 books already, Baruch Hashem, have been distributed by our organization. They cost millions of dollars. The USBs, all the other things, Baruch Hashem, all of that costs a lot of money and we want to do a lot more with it. A lot more with it. So any contribution certainly helps. Either way, thank you very much for learning with me, and BeEzrat Hashem, we will learn again later this week. Kol Tuv.